welcome everybody. I'm Mike Morgan. I'm the chair of APADC. If you're just joining us for one of the first times, you're not familiar with APA, we're a nonprofit trade organization for photographers, and we offer community, inspiration, networking, all kinds of things to keep people here locally connected and together. And nationally, APA does a ton of work behind the scenes for photographers, fighting for the industry, and speaking on Capitol Hill and representing us for copyright and other protections for freelancers. So very important work, and all of your membership goes to supporting all of that. We've got some upcoming events. Well, first, some news. We just announced our recipient of our LGBTQIAP+ photography grant. It's the third annual year that we've done this. The winner is Lindsay Weatherspoon, who's a photographer based in Atlanta and Montgomery, Alabama. She'll be actually appearing at our grant celebration and announcement and happy hour next week. So be mentioning that in just a moment. We've got a few in-person events coming up. That'd be really great. Hope you can join us for Saturday. First one is our monthly coffee break. That's just a casual gathering at the National Portrait Gallery in the Kogod Courtyard. And it's a great opportunity to come and meet your peers and talk business stuff or anything you want. That's 12 to 2 on Saturday. And then we've got a very cool thing that's for members only on Tuesday. We're getting a private tour of the Gordon Parks exhibit at the National Gallery of Art. So that is on Tuesday at 2 p.m. And again, that's members only. From the curator of the exhibit is going to be giving a little private talk and tour. So please join us for that if you can. And then Thursday is the aforementioned happy hour and grantee celebration. That's going to be at St. Vincent Wine in the city. And then we've got another great in-person event. September, we're doing our annual members only picnic and barbecue. That's going to be down at Haynes Point. And we've got that's September 14th. And on the 8th is our happy hour at Shaw's Tavern. And one more in-person event that we've got coming up, Saturday, October 19th, our annual field trip to the Glenstone Museum. So if you haven't been to Glenstone, it is absolutely amazing, not like any other museum you've ever been to. I highly recommend coming out and joining us for that. And again, if you are a member or if you're not a member yet, you're thinking about it, please take a look at all the member benefits, discounts. If you're a member, make sure you're taking advantage of these things. You might already be using some of these products and companies already. Make sure that you check in on with APA and make sure you're getting discounts and whatnot. If you're interested in becoming a member, you can use our discount code. It's $20 off any membership level. It's just use the code DC1 for 20. Okay, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and would like to go ahead and introduce Othello Banaci, who's our speaker today. Othello is an incredibly talented filmmaker and photographer. He's worked on the Emmy-nominated 38 in the Garden, uh, just done a whole bunch of incredible work, and we're very excited to have him not only be a part of our community here, but here to speak to us today. And Othello, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you. And I do want to mention we'll take questions in the chat, and we'll get to all of the questions at the very end. Okay, Othello, feel free to take it away.
So first things first, anyone who doesn't know about APA, like APA is amazing. And like for me and my business, like we get insurance through APA. I use I use APA for my press pass for like flights and stuff. And there's a whole bunch of other things, but like APA is a very like practical organization, and they've done right by me, my company, throughout. So I just wanted to say that first before I got started. Um, but I just want to thank everyone for being here, attending, allowing me to share my journey. And I just want to note that this is a reflection of the wonderful people, the clients, the crew, support system, and community that's been, a part of my career, my life, my journey. So I wanted to start with this, right? Um, it's a quote from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think it's important as we collaborate and as we do the work that we do, the journey is just as important as the final destination, right? So, like, when people are thinking about the art you make, they're thinking about what that process was like and not just a final product, right? You see, you see these stories of individuals who find themselves like, you know, on these projects that were amazing. They do well. Not only was it successful, but the process of making it was successful. So that's just something that is very near and dear to my heart, and it's something I try to take into all of my projects. But I'm going to start from my background. I took a very non-traditional route into photography. So this kind of lays the foundations, the principles, the building blocks for me. If you were to tell me 10, 15 years ago that I would be a photographer, I would not believe you because as you can see, ball was life, ball is life, everything was basketball. But for my career, it laid very important principles down for me. I was a college walk-on. This image right here is from high school. We had one of the best teams in the country for AAU. This guy was the #1 player in the nation. These guys here and him, they were all McDonald's All-Americans. Everyone got scholarships but me, and that's all good. So I ended up walking on playing at Ball State. But the important part of that is that I learned chemistry, right? I learned to play the long game. I learned getting in the gym, getting up shots. And then, when you're playing a sport, right, you work a very long time for one moment. And I think when you're creating, it's a similar sort of idea, right? You're working, you're training, you're practicing in order to reach said goal. And in basketball, this was, a national championship or a tournament champion or conference champion or, the list goes on. So from here to, me actually working, I left school, I went to New York, I was a fashion intern, and then I sort of picked up a camera after I got my camera. You know, a few other things happened, and I ended up here shooting weddings for this guy, Clay Blackmore. And I think this was a very pivotal part of, the early parts of my career because uh we worked in a hybrid situation, right? This is sort of like your fundamentals, right? If we're going to take it back to basketball, this was me learning, the layup and dribbling and like passing and all the basics, right? But in weddings, you operate in a very fast-paced environment. You can't really make no mistakes. You're doing a lot of things in one day, from getting ready to the ceremony to the reception. So you're able to learn a lot of different aspects of photography, of video. And in this company, we did both, right? But during this, I also shot Fashion Week, right? So me on the left is like my first Fashion Week, and me on the right is like me 6 seasons in, right? This would be considered street ball, right? So, um, when I first got to Fashion Week, I got this button-up shirt, like it's all the way at my neck, like I'm choking, but I think that I'm doing something here, right? And on the right, we call this a turtle in the pit, and I have my camera out, ready to shoot, GoPro on my head, but it just goes to show like what happens through that adaptation, through those reps. of like learning something, right? And shooting the pit and shooting at Fashion Week was way different than shooting weddings. And like when you're shooting Fashion Week, it's the runway shows, it's people, it's celebrities, it's all these things that, pique your interest from afar and somehow like you're right in it, right? And Fashion Week was another one of those things that became this sort of like hybrid experience, right? I was there to shoot I was there to shoot video, but I often shot stills. And what ended up happening was I got curious about what it was that, I was capturing, right? Because the runway show is great, but what about all these people? And what about what happens backstage, right? That was the thing that sort of drew my interest. And if you notice, like here, you got one phone out, right? You got a few people with phones, but mostly people are watching, right? This was a different time. This was, I want to say 2015 or 2014. Um, but it's just like a different flow, right? And then towards the end of me shooting Fashion Week, I sort of found myself focusing more on the backstage and focusing more on the individuals that like were on the outskirts and not just who, was on the runway. And I think what's interesting about, this specific photo is that like any is that Anna Wintour, who's the Vogue editor, she would like sprint out after every show. And it's like this elusive, like, where is Waldo figure, right? And I'm for certain that like either she's a sprinter or she like ran track or she's some sort of triathlete. Because as soon as the show is over, you just see this figure like dart off, right? And this was something that like I captured before, I think it was Vera Wang, and I just noticed that like there was more than what I saw coming down the runway, right? So I started focusing more on backstage stuff and like what's happening there. Farah said something interesting in her 30 minutes, that the crowd, and forgive me if I'm butchering this, was also the crowd was also the show, right? Or that concept, that general concept of like, it's not just about what happens on the runway, right? Backstage, it's its own thing. And I felt that this allowed me to pique more interest into photography and like shooting outside of just this, segment of Fashion Week. And I don't necessarily shoot these anymore, but concerts was a really, really, really big thing for me. Anyone who knows, um, anyone who listens to music, who has seen their favorite artist, they know the energy. And I think for me, I did something unique when I would shoot both Fashion Week and concerts. I would essentially like listen to the opposite of what was happening so I don't get caught up in the music, right? So I would have headphones on while this is a guy named Uzi Vert. I'd be listening to like slow jams or jazz or something that was completely opposite so I can kind of hone in and zone and just be in a different place. And that just allowed me to sort of capture these three images. They don't necessarily have a through line other than they both have smoke. They all three have smoke, but Banks is one of my favorite artists of all time. GoLink as well. This is Mike Snow from Fire Festival, not Firefly, not Fire Festival. I didn't go to that. Um, but I used to love concerts, right? And I think for someone who creates and shoots and listens to music and is a part of art, like it was a joy to shoot the concerts because it felt like I was going to the concert, right? I was there, I was next to the artist, didn't have to pay a ticket, and I was also getting paid. So it was just like a fun overall experience. This is the last concert image. But I mean, you talk about feeling, right? Anyone knows, this guy right here, his name is ASAP Ferg. This is ASAP Rocky. This is, I think, like 2013, maybe. ASAP Ferg came out with a song called Shabba Ranks. And anyone who knows ASAP Mob understands that when that song comes on, the whole city, wherever you're at, just shakes, right? And on this concert, I mean, this was shot after he performed, but Ferg had the whole DC in an earthquake, jumped on my head, jumped in the crowd, jumped back out. You can just see the little smirk on his face. It's like satisfaction, right? But like concerts give you that. And I feel that like when I was shooting concerts, I was able to like get that energy, even though I left with, broken glasses. But, you know, it's all good. I shot food for a while. I shot food for 7 years. This is a company called AUI, and I love, love, love AUI. I mean, 90% of the stuff that I would shoot looks just like this on Plexi. But they treated me well, right? And no matter what, I can always look at the images or the content or things that we shot, and it always brings me back to a good place. And I think it's important that like the people that you're working with also make you feel good, just as though you should make the others in the journey, feel good. Um, so I think, my food career may reincarnate eventually. But for a while, this is the kind of stuff I shot, and this was my first commercial client. Um, so yeah, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful. Very, very grateful. So this kind of brings me to kind of what I shoot now in photography, and that's portraits. This is a shot of my friend Aaron, and this was a test, right? Like one thing about basketball and shooting in the gym, like we practice. Like if you look at Steph Curry, all them crazy shots he shoots, he practiced them joints in the gym. And I think for me, when I'm trying to, explore with like different lighting and different techniques, like I tend to test. And this was a test for like an open studio I had, and it ended up being my favorite shot. So, when it comes to me and like the photography, there's an emotional aspect to it. There's a technical aspect to it, but like I'm really keen on making sure that environment is like pleasant. Um, these are some black and whites we did up in New York. Noni on the left, Taylor on the right. And yeah, I think these were lit with natural light and artificial light in a studio. Taylor, there's a big window next to her face. You can kind of see it in her catch light. Noni, the window was a little bit more to the right. We angled her. But we just went up to New York to shoot, and it ended up being some of my favorite images that I've taken. These here were from YouTube Black. It was the first YouTube Black. The agency wanted us to get something that was timeless, that reflected Black. So we decided to go with like a black and white look, because we wanted the creators to get the images immediately. None of the images are retouched. So we had to, be mindful of that when it came to how we lit it. Um, and they just had fun. We shot it in DC. I think it was at the Line Hotel. And you would think that like I had this like big setup, right? I just had a little corner. Um, but I think what's interesting about like lighting is that, every angle, every inch, every, bump up in intensity, every inch of this umbrella I have here all changes the lighting, right? So it was a constant like, you know, constant game of Tetris to like move the light and get everything consistent, and trying to get a uniform look for the team. but in the end, we had fun and it was dope. Um, this was a shot we did for Bombshell magazine up in New York. This was Cody Shane, her first cover. She's a music artist, and we just wanted to get some sort of like, New York feel. So we kind of did a slow shutter. I think I shot it at like a tenth of a second or something like that, and then we just let the cars kind of pass by. This is sort of some of the BTS, don't mind the camera work. Ebony, this was back in the time where like people would kind of like turn the phones because it was kind of a thing to just like kind of, like shoot things in a specific fashion. Um, but this is also a cover we did for the same sort of company because Bombshell and Blue are both owned by Blue. And this was a cover we did for Ryan Leslie. And what's interesting about like some of these like celebrity covers is you don't get much time with them. He was doing it's either Summer Slam or Summer Jam, one of them joints. I can't remember the name because it's been a while. But he had like this is in between like a lot of the music stuff he was going through because he like it was like a laptop thing and then like he had like started a tech company. So this was more about his like tech, but he was also about to go perform and he gave us like an hour, right? So we had an hour. I think he gave us an extra like 20 minutes. So we had an hour and 20 minutes to like get that shot, get those shots. But, in doing so, we had to test. And I'm gonna go back one second. So if you look at like some of the lighting here, you would think to the naked eye that this is all like natural light. Most photographers, all the photographers in here know that it's not. But the goal was to make it feel that way. Um, so this was our test, my boy Brian, and then we have our friend Rayvon. Rayvon was holding the light, Brian was here. We had a softbox off camera to just like light him here. You can see a better angle of that on this side, but we ended up, testing it here. And with these type of shoots, you don't really get that much time with people, right? So essentially, you want to be able to have them stand in, maybe do like one or two tests, and then get right to it, right? Because like clearly Brian's more dark skinned than Ryan, so I had to make sure. Oh, that Brian. But I had to make sure that that we had a general idea of what to do, right? And this was sort of our test. This softbox was about here. Ryan was here. As you can see, this lady's looking at me all crazy. She's like, "Why are you taking a shot of me when I'm taking a shot of Brian?" Then this lady back here is like, "Dang, he's taking a picture of her while she's looking at him." So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. But at the end of the day, we ended up here, which is essentially what we wanted, right? Um, so this image is interesting, right? This was from a test shoot we did in LA, and I think this was like a bare bulb flash, but this was the beginning of a lot of things, right? This image that we did in a test um ended up being the image that Apple used for the Storymakers Festival. Um, and I think I did my today at Apple it was May 29th, May 29th. And the day we did the commercial is the day I met Frank, who directed 38 at the Garden and brought me on as a DP, right? So a lot of things started, from that image, from that moment of time, right? So you think about that long game, that, shooting in the gym for a long time, not knowing when things are going to happen. And this is typically how it works, right? Like something, somebody's hand that you shook in 2015 ends up being the gateway to a project you had in 2030, right? And I just think it's so interesting how things sort of like intertwine and how God just like works, right? Um, but this was from the Today at Apple. And I think this moment is interesting because of what ends up happening next, right? Um, Obviously all the homies are here. DJ B, she helped me put it together. Wendella, we got Keo, we got Sierra. My father-in-law is right here. As you can see, he's not paying attention because I haven't proven my worth yet. So I'm getting there, right? But these three ladies here, Anifa, Yaz, and Brittany, we ended up on like June 4th going to Dubai to shoot another project, right? And what was interesting about this specifically, right, and how things sort of tie together, this Today at Apple was about Fashion Week and how at Fashion Week, I would use like headphones to kind of shift my perspective and try to get like creative images that weren't necessarily something I would traditionally do. And, a lot of times I would go into Fashion Week and I'd be nervous and I'd be like, I don't belong here, whatever, whatever. But if I had headphones on and I wasn't paying attention, I could just shoot whatever I wanted to, however I wanted to, without that little voice in my head saying, like, you don't belong. Right. So, we did like a mock fashion show for, the collection, did a little runway thing, and then we ended up in Dubai and we got this shot, right? Days after, like same week almost. But what's interesting, and I think I saw Jeff in here. Jeff, I'm gonna talk to you about this. Um, but what's interesting about this shot is like what happened to get this shot, right? I talked about that journey. When I was testing for this shot, the night before, I had to like figure out how to get high enough to like take the image. And when I was like figuring out what to stand on, I stood on a table. Well, when I stood on the table, my legs did like this, and I was SOL, right? And just kind of picture this. We're in a pool in Dubai. The rest of the crew and the ladies are like listening to Beyonce, enjoying themselves, and like me in the corner thinking to myself, how am we going to get this done? How are we going to figure this out? And after an 18-hour day, this was the last shot of the day, and it happened. It worked. It was hot. Sun was in my eye. I had one opportunity. I took one shot. Anyone who has ever shot GFX or medium format understands that it's slow. So it was something I had to go off of instinct and eye, and this is what we got. So happy about it. This is the BTS from that. Literally one shot. Um, and yeah, I don't, it's like every now and then you take something, you're like, man, can you believe that that actually happened? And I'm like, we did. We had one shot, we took it. Michaela was a G. She thugged it out for, I want to say more than 18 hours at this point. But I think, these type of projects really, really, sit well with me, and they really bring me back to a good place because the progression and like what it take to get there and all the things that led to that um all sit, near and dear to my heart. Um this image here is an image of Chad Ochocinco. Chad Johnson, he played football. Super dope dude. And what's interesting about this one is that it was real, right? We we were in Little Havana. We saw this stoop, we saw the colors, we saw this man, and we asked him if we can shoot. He was down. And then the lady comes out and she's like, "What are you doing?" We got a couple shots, and then he was like, "I can't deal with the smoke." But we were able to get this, no props needed, shopping cart included with the stoop, you know what I mean? And it just, yeah, it was just it was a moment in time. And I think for me, going back to the idea of how people make you feel, the first thing Chad did was come up to me and say, "Thank you so much for coming. So grateful for you, all the things." And this was at a time in his life where like things were not necessarily going the best. And to see him with so much joy and so much like love in his eyes and so much warm embrace, it just made everything that much better, right? And we ended up shooting both photo and video. This is one of those like hybrid projects that we sort of started to do. And then again, going back to weddings, you know, we would always do like BTS when we shot weddings, or we'd always be shooting photo and video. So that was something that I kind of took into my work to say, like, oh, we can start adding little video pieces. And I think for those who are in the position or are transitioning from photo to video, this is something you can also implement. Just, taking a couple clips, putting something together, and eventually, something shakes, right? Um, yeah, this was a very, very, very fun shoot. There's a lot going on in this one. This is a cover for my friend Danny. We had some fun, and this was another hybrid project we did. So she had a track. Nowadays, a lot of artists moved away from traditional music videos and have been doing these vertical joints. So we did the portrait, and then we did a vertical video for it. Um, there's a lot going on, and I'm going to show you in a second. Um, Again, it's not water. It's a fabric called mylar. Everything is mylar. Um, but it's a very, very meticulous way of shooting and lighting. So this is our setup here. This is Camila. This is Amalie here, who's like helping me out. Um, she was lit with this section here, and this is a 600D punched into a parabolic umbrella, flagged off. There's Mylar here. There's a Fresnel, RE Light, I think it was like a RE 150 or something like that, shooting into the Mylar while someone waved their hands to create the like water effect. Then there's Mylar on the floor, or Mylar on the table, and we had to like prop the table up so it was high enough. Um, for something like this, like I would spend, well, for this project and for this project specifically, I spent like 2 or 3 days just like going in and testing and playing to figure out like what made sense. This is, another angle of it, but you can see like this is the Mylar here. We used a V flat world, uh, like V flat to create another table, so it felt infinite. And then we had to shoot a vertical. This is a red camera, a red Monstro. We used some like weird, funky lenses, and then this is a Dana Dolly. Um, but like, you know, I think for me, being in a position to shoot a lot of like hybrid stuff, also allowed me to shoot things that were specifically video and film per se, video film. To me, it's interchangeable depending on like who you're talking to. But for this, presentation, like we'll just call it film. So this is sort of my process before I get into the projects. I tend to do a brain dump, which is usually a notebook. Every now and then when I'm feeling fancy, it'll be a Milanote. Shot deck. It's sort of like it's like an image reference database. There's also film dash grab. There's frame set. I think there's one called eye candy, or you can just like Google. I try to solve whatever problems I think may come up. We get on a call. I try to dream a little bit. We test, and test is something that's very important. This is like the thing that I have to do. We scout and then we shoot, right? This will be considered like my pregame ritual. And this is a example of what a Milanote looks like. This is a project I'm working on, so some of it's like whited out. But this is like a project about a janitor that I'm trying to like shoot very soon. Um, and this is Shot Deck. For those who have not used Shot Deck, super dope. There's a ton of movies. I think they added some like commercials on there and like TV stuff. Um, but this is a good reference point to figure out like what you have in your head and give, the visuals to whatever the creative team, even if it's just you, um, to like see and visualize. And then this is like a shot deck that I made for a film called Knights of Verona that we just shot. And we took a lot of reference from Only God Forgives, Neon Demon, and Drive. This being the most, you know, direct film that we were sort of trying to emulate. And then this is a test, right? Like we spend a lot of time testing. And I think testing for me is a very important thing because you kind of work out all the kinks and you kind of figure out like where you want to go if you don't know like where you want to go. And this is sort of, the day of. We shot 2 days, lots of crew, lots of fun, very, very, very long days. But in the end, we got something cool. Um, Lots of moving parts. Like I got a whole breakdown of some of this stuff. Like anyone who has questions about any of this stuff in a more like extensive sort of conversation, we can have that. But just sort of like notice some of the things that are similar to the test. And I'm going to show you some shots from the test and then some shots from the film. Mind you, these are not like the colored film. This is just like screenshots from the camera. So just keep that in mind. Um, they were having fun. They were having a lot of fun. All right. So this is from the test on the left, and this is from the camera on the right. Mind you, this is straight from camera. So there's a lot of tweaks and a lot of things that have happened since then. But this is just showing you like where you start with the test and then like where you end, right? And I think it's very important to think about combinations and color palette and uh inspo. Um, so yeah, this one was a really fun project. Really happy we did it. Very fun, lots and lots of colors. Shout out to the whole team. This is a project we did for Rico Nasty. It was a SoundCloud sort of halftime show for SoundCloud Player One. These are some of the frames, and I feel like with music, they allow you to get a lot more like trippy than you would with like documentary or like interviews or like things like that. And for this one, they really like allowed us to kind of like push the envelope. There's no sound on this, by the way, because every time I put this online, they always like strip the music off anyway. Um, and for something like this, it's something that you would essentially do like we shot it like a live performance. So it was like a mix of like pre-recorded stuff, live stuff. And then my boy Daniel St. Hours put it together. We had a super dope team. A lot of local people, everyone was local, artist was local. Um, but it ended up being like one of the more like funner projects we worked on. Uh Yeah, this was fun. There's a lot going on in this, and a lot of these things warrant like longer conversations. But anyone who wants to talk about a specific project can for sure ask me at a later date. Um, this is sort of like the BTS. You have me and Aaron. I was on an easy rig. Aaron was handheld. We kind of booklit it, which is like the light hitting here, going through this, lighting her. Um, and for each sort of like setup, it was different. This is one of those projects that like you just kind of think of the most creative thing you can possibly do at the time, and you do it. And I think in that situation, it ended up working out. Um, This is a project we did for Yale, the Yale and Slavery Research Project. very impactful, very, necessary project. But I think this was also something that took a lot of manpower to get done. While we were doing this, I was going back to school and I was like getting my degree while having to like deliver the final videos. So it was a lot, but it ended up being something that we can always look back at again, that process, and just, bask in it. It was just such a fun time. We were up in New Haven. We did one interview here. The crew was fun, the talent was fun. We learned a lot. There were a lot of cool people in the history of Yale that, we don't necessarily hear about. And we were able to like go to school while working. And it was one of those experiences I can look back and just be so glad that we had. And this is me, my wife, and the president. This is President Salve's like last project. And we were able to get a picture with him. He was happy, so I think the project went well. But again, that experience, like the experience. Like if there's anything you'll get from me is like testing, training, experience, like all those things matter just as much as like making cool art. Like the art is there, it's cool, great. But like, what did you do to get there? What are you doing to like uplift the people around you while you're creating these things? And that's something that's very important to me, and like the people that I'm around, and the people that hired me, and the people that connect with me, because like, it's morbid, but like you'll wake up one day and that'll be your last day, and the art will still go on, but people will remember who you are and what you bring to the table and how you connected and how you touch their lives, right? So I think it's important, while we're here, while we're doing all these things, that we build that bridge and we sort of create spaces that allow people to live in their legend. If I want to quote one of the OG books, The Alchemist. So this is 38 The Garden. I'm not going to, actually, I am. You should go see it. I'm not saying this because I am a part of it. I'm saying it because it's a good movie. And a lot of the people are from DC that worked on this project. Director, myself as a DP, and the editor were all DC based. The director moved to LA, but it was a good project. There's the Easter egg. You can find it if you watch it. I'm not going to put too much on there because I don't want people to like see it. But yeah, we animated ourselves and put ourselves in the movie. This is some of the BTS that we shot for the like investors and the people who are part of the film who could not be there. And pretty much I would just like roll video of like the day and sort of talk about, they would sort of talk about, what we did, where we're at, and like that sort of process, each sort of trip. Um, and I think it's interesting, as a director, Frank, he just kind of lets crew do what they do, right? And I think I'll always love Frank for that. And like, I'm going to show you in a second, he allowed me to shoot interviews on a 12 millimeter, 12 mil, 12 mil. Um, this is like, it's not a very common thing to be able to do this, right? If you notice this image here, you can see the Empire State Building, the whole Madison Square Garden, and this guy here, right? If I shot this on a traditional like interview type lens, then it would look more like this, more like this, more like this. But for the outside stuff, Frank was down for me to shoot these on a 12. Um, but if you haven't seen it, you should check it out because then you can see things in motion. But these are just some of the frames I enjoyed from the film. And this leads me to transition. And I think it's important to touch on this because anybody who is a photographer or transitioning into video, these are just some of the things that sort of help me throughout the process. Um, First being play to your strength, meaning like if you are a swimmer, it's easier to be a swim coach. So if you do corporate, it's easier for you to blend into shooting corporate video than it would be for you to jump in and start shooting sports. And the same thing vice versa, right? Playing the long game is important because it takes a long time to like build the hours and the tolerance and the muscle memory to do some of these things. So I think playing the long game and like playing to your strength, they both coincide. And then like piling on top of that, doing personal work, that just kind of helps you develop without any need to like have a client's approval or have a client like kind of lean into you and say like this is not what we asked for. And I think for me, like personal work led to a lot of the stuff that I do. Personal work led to, us working on 38 The Garden because, Frank saw a project I did. He wanted to do something similar. We started working on something else. Then this came up and we shot it. Right. But like it wouldn't have happened had I not like taken the time to like do some of that personal work. And then hiring crew, right? In some cases, like if it's something that's beyond you, somebody like myself or crew members or other people, you know, hire them, bring them on. Client says they need video, you be the person to oversee it. But in some cases, like it's also a learning experience to sit there and sort of just experience, what else is happening. And then this is something I do when I'm testing. This is sort of me just like shooting in the gym. I call it neighborhood nature. I just started doing it when I was like I think like early 20s, like when I first started, because I didn't have anyone to shoot. But I would just shoot plants and like practice like body language and motion and transitions and things like that. And this is not something I show people. But there's tons of plants on hard drives everywhere. So if you get a chance, just go out and shoot. Go out and shoot. And then this is just some of my gear recommendations for anyone who is looking to sort of get into video. Uh, these are just some of the brands and some of the things that I can vouch for. Some I have experience with, some I don't. Some are, more valuable, some are not, meaning like some will cost pennies on the dollar and some are a little bit more expensive. But yeah, that's all I got. Appreciate you all sitting here listening to me talk. Here's my information. If you want to touch base, if you have any questions, thoughts, all the jazz, I'm here. So yeah, thank you. I went a little bit
Awesome.
long. I was trying to speed it up, but it is what it is.
That no, that was perfect. Thank you so much, Othello. This
Of
was really amazing. I want to give folks an opportunity to ask questions. And let's see here. So I know we've got one in the chat here from Jeff. He says he's particularly impressed by how much time you spend testing. He doesn't hear many still photographers talk about having the flexibility to spend the time to test extensively on commercial projects as much. Do you feel this approach comes more from the motion side of the industry? And do you get client or agency pushback on spending as much time testing if it's a stills only project?
Hmm. So I think what I try to do is I want to make sure people don't have time to think, right? So a lot of times I'm testing in private, just like I would when I was playing ball. So I'd be in the gym at 6 a.m. I'd be in the gym after practice. I was a walk-on, right? So I didn't get a chance to play. But what I did have access to was the gym. So I would always go in the gym and shoot. So I think from the motion side, it's more practical. And I think from the still side, they look at it more like personal work, right? Whereas like from the motion side, you could do tests and just like throw them away. But from the still side, it's like you want to do something that is directly correlated to your particular position or the jobs or the type of clients that you want to take on.
Excellent. Then we've got a question from Kai. It says, wondering on the video side, how you vet new video clients and what makes you all sign on to something.
Um, that's a very good question. So I vet, it's really about like the point person. The point person is who I spend most of the time with. I usually try to like figure out what it is they want, and then I cross-reference that with like things in the past. Like, for example, a client comes up and says, "Hey, we want you to do this project for cheap now, but we're going to give you a lot of work in the future," right? Like a lot of times that work never comes, right? But there was one person, right, who came to me and said that, and I could trust that she was a good person. And I can trust that, like, what she stood for and what the company stood for actually meant something. And literally the next year, that's exactly what happened. Right. So it's kind of a toss up. I'm not 100% on it. Like most times we tend to work with people that are very nice and very good to us, and we can do the same. Every now and then, like things change because clients are not always the same year one than year 15, right? And, it's all about the personnel. But most times you can tell, off the rip if someone is gonna, be a good fit for you or if they're not.
Excellent. Great answer. Great answer. And then uh well I got a question. Kind of going back to your beginnings.
Yeah.
Uh it, how exactly did you like what was your initial interest in getting into film and photography? When were you at Ball State, were you studying this, or is this something you more kind of really got into once you were out of school?
Very, very, very good question. So there was there was this magazine called Ball Bearings at Ball State, right? And when I was playing, my freshman year, ironically, I got to play, and my sophomore year, I didn't play. But sophomore year, I started exploring more and I started getting into like fashion and just, looking at different things in the community. And somebody did a article for this magazine called Ball Bearings, and they had to take a photograph of one of my tattoos. And I was so fascinated in it. And I was like, this is so cool. Mind you, it wasn't something I directly, wanted to up and leave and do. But like my mom, way back in the day, would always give me like disposable cameras to like take pictures of things every year at the end of the year. And that's what kind of brought me into photography. But I never thought it was something I could actually pursue. It wasn't until like I got to New York and I was trying to get an FIT, and I picked up like a little, point and shoot camera to shoot my application, that I started thinking to myself, oh, I can actually play. Like I can do this. This is 2010, I think, 2010. And, back then the thing was like the Canon XTI. You would go by, you'd walk through New York, you'd see them for like $300 in the windows. And I was like, oh, I should get one of those. So that's kind of how that came to fruition.
Excellent, excellent. Well, now we've got a couple more questions here. Just one that came as a DM, asking, do you edit all your motion capture too? Like, are you the one? Are you typically getting involved in the editing process yourself? And I'll just kind of add on to that too. As you're working with larger and larger crews, how involved do you get in the other work that other members of the team are doing?
It depends on my role. Um, So I do a lot of my editing. The BTS that was edited by somebody else. The like the documentary that was edited by somebody else. But like for 38, I had a little bit of a hand early on, but after a while I didn't touch it, right? Whereas like on Nights of Verona, I'm looking at all the frames to make sure like the colors look good. And then I'm on a doc now um about a jazz musician, and they're sending me frames and they're sending me clips of interviews for me to like look at things and like decide on if this was the look we intended for it to look like. So it ranges depending on the project and depending on the team. Because in some cases, I tend to prefer it to look like I shot it. But in some cases, how I think I shot it and how it looks are two different things. Um, so it really just depends on the project. But as much as I can, I try to be involved, or I try to like hand them off something good because it essentially becomes a relay. So if I'm going to be that anchor, I need to make sure I give the next person something good to run with.
And then a follow-up question that came with that too is what software are you choosing to edit with?
So I'm a Premiere guy. I use Premiere. I've tried to use Resolve for a while, and I just can't. Let me rephrase that. I have not been able to lock in Resolve like I have been able to do in Premiere. Premiere is just easier for me, but Resolve is like more powerful when it comes to color. Like I can push and pull the image a little bit better in Resolve than I can in Premiere. But like when it comes to like bread and butter, let's pump it out, I'm in Premiere. If I want it to look more attractive, then I'll go in Resolve, but Resolve doesn't have like what I want that like Premiere offers me. So primarily Premiere with a sprinkle of Resolve.
Right. And then Joseph had a question. So do you have experience or a lot of understanding of press release forms? And I'll expand on that and ask about how do you tend to do your marketing and your outreach these days? What what sort of trends are you following? How do you reach out for new clients?
So this is a very strange answer, but like I am more of like a hermit, right? Like I'm not somebody that like promotes or like sends out emails. That's something I'm gonna do this year. But I'm somebody that likes to make the work speak, right? And as much as I can, I spend more time in the gym shooting and training and making sure that it's right. So when someone hires me and they see something I did, they know that they're gonna get that, right? If you hire LeBron, you're gonna get a dunk eventually. If you hire, Larry Bird, you're gonna get something good, right? So I just want to make sure that when people are hiring me, that they're getting exactly what they're seeing. Now, from that marketing perspective, that is something that I need to spend more time on because there's a lot of things that I'm missing from that. But every now and then we would like pitch. We would pitch like specific people. We would like make a deck pertaining to their industry. So like, if it's like the W Hotel or like, a different project that's similar to that, we tend to do that. But for me, a lot of things come from like planting a seed 8 years ago and that seed blossoming, right? Like I did a project for Marriott in 2015 that ended up being a project for MGM in 2021, right? So a lot of it is relationships and like really just connecting with people outside of like trying to get them to hire me. Because at the end of the day, like I want to have fun with people. I want to connect with people. If you want to spend money, if you want to hire me, great, that's fun. But like we can also play Uno. You know what I mean? So
Excellent. All right, and then I think we'll go ahead and we'll just finish up with these last couple questions here. So I know we're getting over time. Let's see. So another question here from Bill is asking, if you were to start your career all over again, what's one thing you think you'd do differently?
I think I would shoot more tests with people. Um, like I have a very like craftsman mindset that just means like if you're gonna do something, be the best that you can possibly be, no matter what, right? And I realized that like what really extends or what really brings people to your work is creating things with people, creating beautiful things with beautiful people that people are touched by, right? And if you do a lot of that, that in turn become like you bring in more people. And at the end of the day, like a dollar value is great, but like influencing someone's life means way much more, right? So I think starting from that position to say like, hey, let's just go shoot every weekend, right? Like if I were starting my career over today and I had just picked up a camera and I had a group of friends who did all different things, we would shoot every weekend and we would put out stuff every week, right? And it'd be something that like we just did for the heck of it. But when you're training, it's just like the Karate Kid, wipe on, wipe off. Eventually you end up being like a martial artist, right? So I would shoot a lot more with my friends and like not be so stressed out about it.
Excellent advice. And then our last question here from Joseph again. Um, what's your best advice in following a central character in a narrative film or documentary?
A central character. What's my advice for following a central character? In what way? Like in like a verite sense, in like a storyline sense?
Uh, is it okay if I unmute myself?
Go right
Honestly,
ahead.
both. Yeah, both,
Okay.
both. Like the storytelling way and yeah, both ways that you just stated. Yes.
So I think like a big part of like the documentary side and like connecting with like your I would get your subject, your talent is like getting to know them, right? A very important thing when I shoot somebody, like the camera doesn't matter. Like we have to connect before we create anything. So I usually start with people in the makeup chair. As soon as they get to as soon as they get to the studio, we just kick it, we talk, we chop it up, and then we kind of get to it, right? So like building with your character first is like the most important thing because then he lets you in, right? Then he's able to talk. Then he's able to connect. Then she's able to connect. Then they're able to connect, right? It's important to connect with your subject first, build with them, and then go, right? I'm not going to walk up to my wife and just say, like, hey, let's leave. Bye. Like, I'm gonna say good morning. I'm gonna say, like, are you hungry? You know what I'm saying? We're gonna have a conversation before that thing happens. So that opens the door. So then they're like, hey, I'm gonna do this thing. And then we can kind of go from there, right? I was shooting a documentary that didn't end up going anywhere in uh what is it called? In Atlantic City. And like these are like 10-hour days in the winter, like on the block. And on the block is just like, we're in the street. Um, and the guys, they related to me. So we were able to, be in the middle of the hood or be in a very like compromising area and be able to just like talk to people, connect with people because we've already built that rapport. We've already hung out. So I think it's important for you to spend more time hanging out and like connecting with the character first, the talent first, the person first, and then thinking about like, going out and doing it. Like break bread, no cameras, no anything, and just like get to know the person and then start thinking about the work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that response. And I do want to say I do love the movie Drive with Ryan Gosling. He's one of my favorite
Mm,
actors. Good one is The Place Beyond the Pines. Another
Oh,
great
I love
movie.
that. That's my joint.
Yeah,
That's
that's one
my
of my
joint.
favorite
The
movies.
oneer from the beginning, like I literally went out and practiced that oneer from the beginning for like a full day.
That's
And
awesome, man. Yeah, that's dope. That's good to know. Look forward
yeah,
and like keeping in touch with you through email. I'll definitely send an email and look forward to connecting with you.
yeah, for sure. Reach out.
Okay, all right, and then Othello, on behalf of APA and everybody who joined us today, thank you so much for your presentation, for sharing your incredible work, and for giving your time today. We really appreciate it, and yeah, and thanks everybody for joining us today. And hope you all can join us at our upcoming events this coming week. And yeah, have a great day, everyone.
Join APA. Everyone join APA.
Yes, join APA,
Join,
please.
join APA.
Okay, thanks everyone. Take care.